Alright, so we need to talk about the Mandalorian and Grogu Star Wars movie that is coming out, being released in 2026. And with this being the first Star Wars movie for the first time in 2019 since the Rise of Skywalker, it's going to be the return of the iconic duo that everyone fell in love with from the Mandalorian series when it first premiered on Disney Plus. But now, with this movie, and it is rumored to be like the conclusion of the show, the last time that we see these characters, and what the future of Star Wars holds, as especially for the Mandalorian IP character itself. So that's what I'm going to be breaking down and sharing with you guys. Go over my thoughts on this. And considering that was going to be season 4, but now being turned into a movie, it will be like the final chapter. And so, if you're new, then be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so miss out on any future videos, including this. But now, let's talk about it. And now, if you guys know The Mandalorian, the series that first came out back in 2019 when Disney Plus first launched, it was a good show. It had epic Star Wars content, and that was adapted into streaming format of what they were trying to adapt. Like, this is especially around that time in that era, and even with the first 2 seasons that were epic, it had epic action sequences, and everyone fell in love with Din Djarin, but most importantly, Grogu, aka the Baby Yoda. That was obviously a fan favorite, and now, but with season 3, when that came along, that was a major dip in quality. What I mean by that, but it started off good. It had good stuff. But it just had all these side quests and subplots that made Din Djarin the side character. He was sidelined, but that made Bo-Katan like the main star, like the main character of the show. But even at the end of that 3rd season, it turned out all right. I thought it had a pretty good finale. It brought back Giancarlo Esposito's Moff Gideon. But now though, with this movie that's now going to be released in 2026, and even though with Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau, we're having plans to have this being like a 4th season, but now it's going to be turned into a movie. But now, even with this rumor that's going around, that with the Mandalorian and Grogu movie, it's going to be the conclusion of the show, and it's probably a confusing slate for fans. I'll explain why with my pros and cons of why I think like it could be or not be a good idea. And now, with the idea of a Mandalorian and Grogu movie, I like the sound of that, because even when it was first announced at the start of the year back in January of 2024, and then with the idea that I started to develop more with Din Djarin and Grogu going on a brand new adventure, which I'm excited for. I hope they go across other galaxies and see what new things they encounter. And you with footage that was shown at this year's D23 with stuff that was going to happen, and it seemed kind of cool, especially with the concept, and even with this concept art that was released when the announcement first came into fruition. Now, coming from insider Daniel RPK, he says that with the Mandalorian and Grogu movie will mark the conclusion of the Disney Plus series with Din Djarin and Grogu probably going on their last adventure. That there was plans for a season 4, but now it's going to be turned into a movie. It's going to be the epic conclusion and the last time that's going to close, and a neat tight bow around the show. But it also continues that with Din Djarin, he will stick around and appear in other Star Wars projects. And what do I mean by that is like he could appear in like Ahsoka season 2, and he could also appear in Dave Filoni's Mandoverse movie that's going to be combined. I think it's going to be released around like, I don't know, probably like the next in 2027, I believe. And now, moving on to my pros and cons as to why I think this could or not be a good idea, especially as this will be confusing for fans that really enjoy the show, but besides of the main Star Wars universe continuity, and that is with the pros, and that is starting with The Mandalorian was epic Star Wars content, and with the fans, they'll really enjoy seeing this duo on the big screen, and that'll be good, because I mean, The Mandalorian and Grogu have been like fan favorites ever since the Mandalorian, ever since it launched, and now that there's going to be a movie that's going to bring Star Wars fans back, and that is good. And next up is that this is going to be the first Star Wars film to be released theatrically after the Rise of Skywalker back in 2019, and even with that film that was so divided divisive, and the sequel trilogy, and now with the Mandalorian and Grogu movie, that's going to be the first theatrically released movie to be released like years later, and I think it's going to be like a fresh start. And now the next one up is Lucasfilm and Disney are going to be focusing more on theatrical releases, like especially with big budget projects like that are turning into streaming shows, and even with the upcoming slate of Star Wars shows, and they're just fine, and some people might not be a fan of it. And now moving on to my cons, and that is for the fact that The Mandalorian was a great show until season 3 came along. It was a major dip in quality that had so many subplots and side quests that had Din Djarin be on the sidelines, and then having Bo-Katan be the main star with Grogu, and that storyline was uninteresting to me. And even with the first 2 seasons that were pure Star Wars television, but even though it retconned a couple things, like at the end of season 2 involving Luke Skywalker, and even with the book of Boba Fett, which I did not like, and Boba Fett will not be part of the Mando and Grogu movie, which I totally get, and that's okay. And now, with the next part, is that a film that is Star Wars related, that is being released in 2026, that will be involving the characters of the Mandalorian and Grogu, is going to be coming off of a show that's going to require homework. And what do I mean by that is that with the Mandalorian, that was in the first 3 seasons, but now with this movie that was going to previously be a season 4, but now it is going to be a movie in which the general audience is going into this Mando and Grogu movie. If they have never seen the Mandalorian show on Disney Plus, they're going to be so confused, and it's going to make problems arise. But even with fans that did enjoy the show but didn't like season 3, and people are just not going to turn up for this movie, and the hype is not there anymore. And I feel like, I mean, I am going to show up for this movie. It looks sort of interesting, but if they're going to market this as like the last time that we're going to see these characters and make it for high stakes, they're just going to be confused out of their minds. And one last thing that I will say here, and this is also part of the cons list, is that the Star Wars fan base is divisive right now, and like everything is in a place where it's filled with toxicity, like especially after the sequel trilogy, and even that Star Wars shifted from that to television, that doesn't really satisfy fans, especially with the streaming content. I mean, I liked Andor, The Mandalorian, but all those other shows, they were fine and solid. But even with the Mandalorian and Grogu movie, that's going to mark the conclusion of a 3-season show that everyone enjoyed, but like even with general audiences that never even experienced the show and are going into this new Star Wars movie expecting like a brand new adventure, like they're going to be confused. But I think it's just, I thank God it's a rumor for now, it's not confirmed, but even coming from an insider who has been right about some things. But I think we're just going to have to wait and see. But I think with this Mandalorian and Grogu movie that was going to be a 4th season, but now this will mark like the end of the Mandalorian series as we know it. And don't worry, Din Djarin will still be around, and I guess once we wait and see what the outcome is. But I am interested in what this new Star Wars movie is about. And yeah, it has to be intrigued. But that's going to do it for the first video. Just let me know in the comments below, and what your thoughts on this, what your thoughts on the Mandalorian and Grogu movie being like the last time that we see these characters on their new adventure, and what do you think the future of Star Wars holds. Just let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to notification bell for future videos. And also follow all my social medias, always linked down below. And with that, I'll see y'all next video. Peace.